Hey yo, what's going on? I'm Ben. I am not a DFS pro. I'm just your everyday guy who loves DFS. I'm excited to talk about this week because it is kind of or was a very weird week. Hey yo, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel for my second video. Hopefully I've made a few changes this time that are helpful. One being that I'm not covering up player scores with my webcam. Welcome to the channel. My name is Ben. I'm not a DFS pro. I'm not a content provider. I am just a guy who loves DFS. And this year started reviewing my lineups personally, doing a written format, and found it really helpful for me. I've grown a lot as a player this year. And so I've started to do this for fun, and hopefully you get something out of it as well. I really enjoy watching lineup reviews and just hearing somebody else's thought process. The cool thing about a lineup review is that I don't have to be the smartest guy, because as long as I'm talking around it in a way that helps you think through your decisions and kind of walk you through what mine were, we can both get better together. So that is the idea. I am a small stakes player. I play for fun, but also because I want this to be a genuine income stream for me. So if that's something that's interesting for you, keep watching this channel, because I'm going to continue creating content around how to create DFS as an income stream, and not because I'm an expert and know how to do it, but because I'm going to be there right there with you, trying to do so and just kind of documenting my journey, ups and downs. And we got some downs this week that I will talk about. Actually, you know what? Why don't I just start there? So we're going to go into my single entry. I'm a single entry player, by the way, and it's a tournament player. This week's lineup was the one that I'm going over, is, as you can see, in just kind of a small field tourney. Let's see, there were like 60 some people on this one, I think. So it's not a large field, and my lineups in those, large fields didn't do quite so well. And this one just made the cash line. So not a great week for me. But I wanted to start off by saying I wasn't super excited and didn't feel great about this week from the start. And I had this kind of gut feeling of like, oh, okay, I should just play like half my bankroll, still put some stuff out there, because I do feel that there is some uncertainty that I can capitalize on that other people aren't paying attention to. But I ended up playing my full bankroll for the week, and I paid for it, literally, because it was one of my worst weeks of the season. Barely won anything, didn't break even, just rough overall. And so my main takeaway there, the big downside, is that this lineup was my best one. I've had multiple weeks this year where my small field single entry lineup was my best lineup, and I only had it entered in a couple places, so I didn't win much money because I had a lot of the rest of my bankroll in larger field tourneys with lineups that I was differentiating, playing with other players instead of these guys, this lineup. And so my bankroll has taken a massive hit this year because I have not been entering a larger percentage of this lineup into smaller fields. So the big takeaway for me this week, that I've mentioned a couple times to myself in my written lineup review document that I do every Monday, which you can get linked below. Check it out yourself. It's a Google Doc, so you can either read mine or make a copy for yourself and use it yourself. The takeaway is that I should have been putting these single entry lineups that an optimal lineup for me, into a lot of these smaller field contests. So that's enough of that, and let's jump into what this actually looked like. So like I said, about 60 entries here. I finished just above the cash line, so the $9 tourney, 115. Yeah, like I said, literally finished above the cash line. The lineup score is 165 on a weird week. So my big picture, what I was thinking this week is that I wanted to be overweight from the field with the Saints-Falcons game. Excuse me. So you'll see here I have players from that game: Taysom Hill, Michael Thomas, Ridley, and Julio. Now, I know it seems a little bit crazy. I'll talk through this in a second. But before we get to that game stack, I just want to throw out here that my lock play of the week was Myles Gaskin at 5,900, coming back from IR. Why Myles Gaskin? Not a sexy name at all. But he showed that he had a bell cow role earlier in the year. They were happy to throw him multiple passes. I think he had like 4 to 6 targets in the games that he was playing, and a genuine goal line role once Jordan Howard was off the team or put on the inactive list. I wanted Myles Gaskin every single lineup, 100% in this lineup, but then and also in my larger field tourneys. I played all Myles Gaskin. I just thought that at 5,900, he was the play of the week. Bell cow back against a bad defense in Cincinnati, multiple likely shots at a touchdown on the goal line. Miami's defense was going to hold this game. You know, backup quarterback Ryan Finley, to nothing. So expected him to have multiple chances to score, and he did not. I think the stat was he was 0 for 6 inside the 10, which, oh God, that hurts so much because even, that touchdown or two really changes things on a slate like this. So Myles Gaskin was my lock play of the week. Other chalk that I played in this lineup was Anthony Firkser at 2,500. I actually started off the week where I was not going to play Firkser. I don't love playing really chalky tight ends because tight end is a high variance position. So I don't want to play tight ends at usually like more than 20% really. But I came around to him late in the week because I realized that I wanted exposure to the Titans offense against the Browns in this game that I expected to be relatively high scoring. And at 2,500, he doesn't have to do much. And this truly is exactly what you're hoping for. Obviously, if he gets a touchdown in there, you're really looking great. But, he was almost guaranteed 4 to 6 targets in this spot, and just too easy to pass up at that point. So ran with Firkser and then David Montgomery. I'm a Bears fan, by the way, for anybody that doesn't know. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I'm from Chicago, grew up in the suburbs there. And man, the Bears are bad, for one. But Montgomery in this spot, I've played, there's been a couple Montgomery chalk weeks this year, and he just always finds a way to shit the bed. Like, the offensive line is bad. I think he's actually better than his scores look. Maybe he's not. But he just has had nowhere to run. But this week against a terrible Lions run defense, and again, a heavy pass roll recently, true goal line back, it just too hard. I mean, these guys that are going to get you 15 to 20 carries, 4 to 6 targets, and have a true goal line roll at less than 6K, it's just, you truly cannot avoid guys like that on DraftKings. So, played David Montgomery. It actually paid off for once. He actually hit a ceiling. So that was pretty nice there. Now, you'll notice that I actually have, we'll talk about Taylor in a second and why I played him, but you'll notice I have 3 running backs this week. I actually don't normally play this in tournaments. Generally, wide receivers just have a higher ceiling, and so I like to use the flex spot for receivers. There has been a little bit of data that I've seen this year that kind of proves that out, where it hasn't always been the case in the past. But running back is just so split this year because not many teams are giving kind of like full workloads to running backs. And just because, a receiver can grab one 40-yard catch for a touchdown, and that's an 11-point play. So usually going to be plus EV to take a wide receiver in the flex in tourneys where ceiling is important. But in a smaller field, and because of this unique week where we didn't have a lot of floor because there wasn't a lot of certainty in these plays, I was okay with it. I mean, you got 3 guys here who are sub 6K and have the ability to punch in 2 touchdowns. So, and have a passing game role, and we're all facing bad run defenses. So, kind of a unique spot. We'll round out the running backs with Jonathan Taylor. Now, you'll see that he was much less owned than Gaskin and Montgomery for good reason. The Colts have not been consistent with who they've played or rode at running back. We've had a handful of Nyheim Hines games this year. But in this spot against Houston, a bad run defense, I really liked Jonathan Taylor. They showed a couple weeks ago, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, that they were willing to ride him against a bad Packers run defense, and I figured this lined up the same way. Frank Reich is a relatively smart coach. There's a lot of stupid coaches in the NFL, but Reich is one who actually seems pretty adaptable. And I was okay with Taylor in this spot. It was a little bit scary, and quite frankly, I ran kind of hot with him because he had a 39-yard touchdown reception or something. So Caught a little bit of a break there. Going back to Frank Reich, though, these coaches are just fucking idiots, man. Jonathan Taylor had, it was like 3 carries for 10 yards in the first 3 quarters. And then they rode him, gave him 10 carries and got 90 or 70 yards in the 4th or something like that. Just absolutely ridiculous. What the fuck is going through these coaches' heads? I honestly have no idea. But alas, we hit on Taylor. Didn't really, it's not like I pulled away from the field or anything there, but it ended up being a good play. All right. I'm actually going to finish or hit defense here before we go back to and finish with my stack. Seahawks defense against Colt McCoy and the Giants. Just seemed too good to pass up. Seahawks defense did not start the year strong, but they've gotten a couple guys back from injury, and they've been playing well since. Look, 9 points is good at defense, but I've just had multiple weeks in a row now where I've paid in the 3Ks, not paid all the way up for defense, but, paid over 3K, and my defense has scored less than 10 points. If I'm paying into the 3K range, I want a defense that is getting me double digits, and I thought the Seahawks had a chance to get me there, and didn't quite make it. And we had a defense in the Patriots who fucking smashed this week. Scored 30 plus against the Chargers. Just hurt. There's no real rhyme or reason for that. You can't fault yourself for not being on it, but just kind of painful to miss out on something like that. Again, similar to tight end, I don't want to be playing defenses at 20+%. It's a high variance position. You don't want to be siding with the field. You don't want to be siding with ownership at tight end and defense. Like I said, tight end I'm actually okay with this week because of the nature of the position. It's been a disaster this year, but is just as bad this week. And then with the obvious outlier of Darren Waller just absolutely smashing the slate. Like, what the hell? Where did that come from? He basically took what he should have scored over the past 4 games and put it into 1. Don't want to be taking defense at 20+%. I don't give a shit how good they line up on paper. That's one of the things I've gotten from my reviews this year is you don't want to be playing these high-owned defenses, especially when you're paying up for them. If you could get somebody at almost $1,000 less, even if they have a less chance of hitting a ceiling you're just putting yourself in a better spot. So that kind of hurts. Finally, finishing with my stack here. I've got Taysom Hill, Michael Thomas, bringing it back with Ridley and Julio. Now, you're probably thinking, Ben, why the hell are you playing one receiver with the quarterback you started and two receivers with no quarterback? Now, I will tell you why. I don't think that was the ultimate sharpest play. I don't. But we do, I believe, have to look at every slate every week, but more specifically, every slate specifically. Now I'm just saying that word a lot. We have to look at it in a vacuum. And with the way that this slate lined up, I wanted to find floor because I figured a lot of people would be playing rosters with guys who had a decent ceiling, but who didn't have much floor. So if their guys failed and I had a better floor on my roster, then I could still come out on top. Now, in tourneys, always looking for ceiling. So I still wanted to do that here, and I felt that I had that with these guys. But the floor was much more of something that I was looking for this week. Now, you do always want floor in small single-entry tournaments, but the way that this slate played out, you really wanted it. So, looking at these ownership percentages, holy shit! Like Hill for 1.5, Ridley, like all these three receivers at sub 10. You can look at results and say, okay, like, yeah, it wasn't that great of a play. However, I was watching this game, the end of it, which was maddening. Ridley almost had a touchdown. He had 1 foot halfway out of bounds. Julio missed going over the 100-yard bonus here. So you're talking another 10 to 15 points between these two guys. And that's what I was really looking at these two as, was a block. I was not really looking at them as, oh, I think Ridley's going to smash and I think Julio's going to smash. I was thinking that between the two of them, they should, as a block of two players, smash. I was fully expecting them to have a good chance to get to 45 or 50 between the two of them. They obviously didn't hit that, getting 34. But I figured they absolutely had the capability of 45 to 50, and like I just said, had a couple, literally two other plays gone right, they would have been right in that range. This was, again, a floor ceiling combo play for me this week. I wouldn't do it on just any week. And again, I think that's really important to mention here, is that this slate, man, I really cannot speak. I think I gotta call it a day here. It's been a long work day. I'm doing this at the end of the day, and I've been working all fucking day, so I'm spent. But I wouldn't normally play these guys together without Ryan on any slate. Taysom and Michael Thomas. Taysom, I didn't originally start the week on, but because the quarterback position was just awful this week, and because of what I mentioned about floor, realized that Taysom Hill's rushing floor is still very underrated in terms of the kind of like safety that it offers you. And I did expect this game environment to be higher scoring than most, more competitive at least, and so I did expect for him to put up about 200 passing and maybe even potentially throw for 1 or 2. He did end up passing for 2, running for none, but he had 83 yards on the ground. And honestly, 25 points is like exactly what I was hoping for from him. With Michael Thomas, who has not put up good numbers in the past couple of games, so his price has dropped all the way to $7K this week. He's getting a huge target share from Taysom Hill, but they just haven't been passing that much. So Taysom Hill's only been throwing the ball 20, 25 times or something like that. And so, Michael Thomas sees a relatively small target count, but I figured in this game they might have to be throwing more, and that Michael Thomas's ceiling was really, really good. And he ended up hitting 20 plus without even getting in the end zone. So I really liked that pairing for, again, a floor and ceiling combo. I've talked about that literally throughout this entire thing. I wouldn't, in general, in my opinion, for a good single entry tourney lineup, at least in small fields, you do want to have a solid floor and ceiling combo. It's different than pure cash games where you're really just kind of looking for floor, and it's also different than large field tourneys where you're really just looking for ceiling. You want to have a mix of both, and this week was just way more so than even normal. So that was pretty much how I looked at my roster as a whole this week. Like I said, this one I'm actually pretty happy with. I like to be realistic in terms of looking back on the week, and I really, at least for these small field tourneys, I really wouldn't have gone in many other places. There are some things I'm bummed about in my larger field. I think really the only thing I may have done differently here is run a naked Carr at my quarterback. Didn't trust any of his receivers. Unfortunately, I realistically would not have paid up at tight end for Carr or for Waller at 6,100. So that wouldn't have happened, but that's about it. That's my lineup for this week. Also, another cool thing about playing these smaller field tourneys, cool and not cool, is that you get these big name dudes who play these things. Killaby, Giant Squid here, Who's Your Daddy, Mavin Goose. Like, you have all these guys who, I think A.E. Jones, Chipotle Addict, all these pros just fill up basically all of these $9 tourneys, or not even $9, all these like smaller dollar small field tourneys. I think they just like pick up all of them, and I think that's probably how they make most of their bankroll and their earnings, is by playing these tourneys. I don't know for sure, but based on my observation, that's seems to be the most likely case. So on one hand, it kind of sucks because you're going up against these guys. On the other hand, it forces you to be good and get better, and also gives you a chance to look at these guys' lineups and these pros, being able to look at them and say, oh, like, how did they create these combos? Oh, he played Tannehill, Davis, and Ferkser. Oh shit, that's pretty sharp. He played some chalk at Dalvin, Cooks, and Seahawks. Even throw a little bit of Chris Carson in there. You can start looking at these guys' lineups and get a really good idea for how they create them. Giant Squid played chalk, James Robinson, David Montgomery. He also went chalk with Watson, Kuti, Akins, and Cooks. Just shoved them all in there. Seahawks D. Again, both good and bad to be in with these guys in these tourneys, but I will say it feels pretty good when you are able to actually cash and finish better than some of these guys too. It'll be week by week, but just an interesting note there. Anyways, that's it for me for tonight. Like I said, you can grab my Monday lineup review in the comment or the description box here. You can also check out my Saturday Sharpening, which is a document that I created for Saturdays or even early Sunday mornings when I'm really trying to think through the plays that I want for the week. Feel free to read my stuff or just copy it and create one for yourself. I've just found them to be really, really helpful for me in my process in really kind of digging a layer deeper and getting these thoughts out of my head onto paper where I can actually mold them into something useful. So that's it for me today. Thanks for hanging out. If you got questions or anything, hit me up in the comments. What did you like from this roster? What didn't you like? What agree with, don't agree with? What did you play this week? Let me know. I want to hear, and talk to you guys soon.